What's going on, everybody? It's your boy J Hova of SOSMG. That will be me. I'm back with another video. Today's video is about anxiety. I know a lot of people that personally deal with this. I found a video that I like that I think touches on it well. So without further ado, let me get to the video.
Hello, my name's Tim Box and I feel anxious. I feel anxious about whether or not I'm going to remember what I came here to say. I feel anxious about whether or not you guys are going to agree with what I came here to say. And if I'm completely honest, up until about 30 seconds ago, I felt a little bit anxious about the possibility of tripping up this rug on the way out. But I think feeling anxious about these things, while seemingly unhelpful, is perhaps understandable. After all, it's important to me that I say exactly what I came here to say, that my message gets heard, and that I achieve this without falling flat on my face. Yeah, right now, anxiety makes sense. But there was a time in my life when anxiety really didn't make sense. I used to feel the kind of anxiety that meant I would struggle to even walk into a room with this many people in it, let alone stand at the front and give a talk. Now, obviously, something has changed since then, otherwise I wouldn't be standing here now. And I think the main thing that's changed is that whilst I still experience anxiety, I no longer suffer with it. But I didn't achieve this shift by trying to get rid of it. Now, don't get me wrong, back in the day, that's exactly what I was trying to do. I would do all I could to avoid any anxiety-inducing situation. I would arrange my daily movements, specifically avoiding social situations. If I felt anxiety starting to flare up, I'd run away. I'd do all I could to retreat to safety and then employ various distraction techniques to take my mind away from the horribly uncomfortable feeling that something bad was about to happen. But it turns out that was my big mistake. You see, you don't get rid of anxiety by trying to get rid of it. Truth is, you don't get rid of anxiety at all. Now, by some twist of fate, or perhaps as a direct result of what I went through back then, I now work with anxiety sufferers to help them understand and ultimately overcome those feelings. I've spent a large part of the last 10 years talking to anxiety sufferers about their anxiety. And whilst all those I spoke to had their own individual story, their own personal journey with anxiety, every single one of them at some point expressed exactly the same desire that I used to have, the desire to get rid of anxiety completely. Can you imagine if we all achieved that? A world without anxiety. What would that even look like? Well, for example, this room would probably look empty. Anxiety is the feeling that tells us when something is worth demanding our attention. So in some small way, it was anxiety that reminded you had somewhere to be today. Without it, none of us would have turned up, and those that accidentally did would be watching an empty stage. None of us would have businesses, careers, because we wouldn't have regarded study and gaining qualifications as worth bothering with. And none of us would have boyfriends, girlfriends, husbands, or wives either here or at home, because we just wouldn't have seen the value of washing and dressing up to make a good impression on that all-important first date that we probably forgot to turn up to. So it seems anxiety is important. But of course there are those that don't feel anxiety. There are two very distinct groups. The first group, dead people. Dead people don't feel anxious. And I think that's okay. They're dead. They've got enough to not worry about. The second group would be those we might refer to as psychopaths. Those people that for whatever reason lack the ability to have any concern for the consequences of theirs or anyone else's actions. Now, I don't know how you were brought up, but when I was a kid I was given the distinct impression that being part of either of these two groups would be undesirable. So if being free of anxiety would be such a bad idea, why do we regard feeling anxious so negatively? Now, I think the very obvious answer to that question is that it feels horrible. When we suffer high levels of anxiety over a long period of time, it can very quickly start to dominate our life. even go on to define our existence. Of course we're going to try and get rid of it. But what if we can't? What if all of our attempts to control our anxiety response ultimately fail? Then where do we go? I think most people go along to their local doctor. And I should state at this point, I'm a big fan of doctors. They've saved my life on more than one occasion, and I feel a tremendous amount of sympathy for them when it comes to treating anxiety issues, because it's really not what they signed up for, and it's certainly not what they're trained for. When it comes to anxiety, doctors are restricted in 3 important ways. Firstly, time. You get somewhere between 8 and 11 minutes for an appointment with your local GP, which is nowhere near enough time to effectively diagnose and treat an anxiety issue. Secondly, knowledge. Doctors are taught that anxiety is a mental health condition, and yet they're not mental health specialists. If a doctor wishes to become one of those, they have to train for a further 5 or 6 more years to become a psychiatrist. And thirdly, resources. Doctors are given precious little support when it comes to actually treating anxiety. They can put you on a 12 to 16 week waiting list for some form of counselling, but by the time we got to the doctor, we're probably in such desperate need of assistance that being told we now have to wait 3 or 4 months to talk to somebody is not helpful. That leaves the only other option, medication. I'm not a fan of medicating anxiety. Now, whilst I'm well aware that taking drugs can change the way we feel, back in the 90s, I witnessed many of my friends on a Saturday night discovering that very simple truth. But with medication comes all sorts of unpredictable and unpleasant side effects. And in the unlikely event we do find the drug that agrees with you, that calms your anxiety response without any side effects, then of course it's all too easy to now regard ourselves as dependent on that drug. And then the possibility of developing a dependency on our anti-anxiety medication just becomes something else to feel anxious about. The truth is, a medical solution to a non-medical problem will not solve that problem. It will at best just patch over it for a short while. Now, the irony here is that most of the people I've spoken to, they already know all of this. They know the doctor is not a great option for our anxiety, which then begs the very obvious question, so why do we go there? I believe we go there because these days we are told anxiety is an illness. And this is perhaps the one certain result of going to the doctor for your anxiety. You will come away from there labelled with an anxiety issue, maybe even diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. And now you have a brand new thing to feel anxious about. During the thousands of conversations I've had with anxiety sufferers, there was a common thread. When asked what they felt most anxious about, the answer was generally how anxious they felt, and if it would ever stop. This concern is almost entirely created and fueled by the idea that anxiety is an illness. Anxiety is not an illness. Anxiety is an emotion. Every emotion is important. Every emotion has a purpose. Every emotion is a natural and vital part of our human experience. In that respect, anxiety is no more sinister than any other feeling we might have. If we didn't feel anxiety, we'd be one emotion short of the full set. That really would be a disorder. I want to share with you now an analogy that might go some way towards helping us understand our emotional responses. I want you to think of your mind like a ship. Every ship has a captain and a crew. In this analogy, the captain is your logical, rational, conscious part of your thinking. It's the part that knows where you want to go, why you want to go there, and has a fair idea of how you think you're going to get there. Unfortunately, the part of our mind that has its hands on all the things that steer and sail our ship, that's the crew. That's your subconscious. Your subconscious is in charge of all of your automatic responses. So your patterns of thought and behaviour, your belief systems, and perhaps most importantly, your emotions. Your crew sail your ship by triggering the appropriate emotional responses. So for example, if we regard something as dangerous, our crew might trigger the feeling of fear. We'll become uncomfortable, and this feeling will encourage us to move away from the danger to return to comfort. If we believe we've been wronged, a member of our crew might trigger anger. We'll energize and our focus will be drawn towards taking whatever action is necessary to right the wrong. So what about anxiety? Why do our crew trigger that particular emotion? Now, no doubt every single one of us will have our own idea about what anxiety means to us. But put simply, anxiety is the emotion that tells us when something is too important to simply lose focus of. It's the voice of concern about an upcoming event or situation that refuses to be ignored. It's the crew saying to the captain, you need to pay attention to this. Now, here's the important part. Your crew are operating on one very simple principle. They're trying to find the best strategy for the most happiness. Yes, safety is important. After all, safety is a huge component part of happiness. We can't feel happy if we don't feel safe. But ultimately, at all times, your crew are trying to steer you in the direction of happiness. As the American author John Shedd once wrote, a ship in harbour is safe, but that is not what ships are built for. So even when your crew are making you feel awful, telling you things about yourself you really don't want to hear, those seemingly self-destructive thoughts, I'm not good enough, I'll never succeed, I'm unlovable, even these harsh words are simply designed to steer you away from any situation that might lead to an unhappy experience. They're not trying to sink the ship, they're just trying to sail it away from the stormy seas that we fear we might not be able to cope with. But every decision your crew makes is based upon the things you've learnt throughout your life. And because many of these things were learnt when you were very young, some of them no longer apply. Some of them were just wrong in the first place. What this means is that as far as anxiety is concerned, your crew will very often make mistakes. But just because they get things wrong doesn't make them the enemy. And yet, this is a sentiment I hear all the time.
I think that's a good place to stop it, right? So I wanted to talk about anxiety because it's an important subject to me, because I know a lot of people around me that's going through anxiety, and I just wanted to touch on a few basic principles that he said. So the only people that don't feel anxiety are dead people and psychopaths. I love that quote. I love that quote. Everybody that has emotions at some point or another has gone through and felt anxiety, and is usually brought on by something that we deem to be of ultimate and utmost importance. I can't tell you guys how to stop anxiety because I don't think it should be stopped. I think anxiety is one of the greatest feelings that you can feel, that you know that you're on the edge of something that's important to you. All the things that don't matter, you see, you never get worried about those things. Every time I'm finna do a show, every time I'm finna start one of these videos, I get a little anxious feeling, and it's always like, what if they don't like it? What if I forget my words? What if? You wanna know how you get over there? Just do it. When I get on the stage and I go out there and I forget all my words and I'm out there rapping in the moment, I'm not worried about what if I forgot the words. I'm worried about, all right, how do I keep the show going? That's it. It's not a question of what if when you actually doing something. Anxiety only comes when you thinking about doing something. When you already done it, and when you are in the midst of doing it, you are, trust me, nobody cares about jumping out the plane when you are already in the air. I love this topic because this is the start of where the depression conversation kicks in. Like, anxiety is right before you feel like giving up on it and you just gonna live with being normal, and then we gonna pivot into a different conversation. So if we can stop it right here, by telling y'all that you are not in control. At some point, you got to let go and let whatever your creator that you believe in, your God, your universe, your Allah, your Buddha, at some point you got to let go and realize that you are not in control, and The only way to get over it is to go through it. I didn't want to spend long on this topic. But I do have a question. If you guys have any ways that you deal with your anxiety, I would love for you guys to put it in the comments, so maybe we can help each other get over these small hurdles of anxiety, because it's plaguing our universe. Actually, everybody is self-medicating. Everybody is going through alternative methods to deal with normal emotions that leave you numb after a while. If you didn't feel happiness, what would you do? If you didn't feel sadness, what would you do? If you didn't feel anger, what would you do? If you didn't feel anxiety, what would you? You'd be a fucking robot. Excuse my language. You'd be a goddamn robot, man. Stop running away from your feelings. Learn how to deal with them properly, and learn how to use them to propel you to greatness. Once again, I am your boy J Hova of SOSMG. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. This is a great video. I advise everybody to watch it. Once again, like, share, subscribe. Help me out. Subscribe to the channel. Share with somebody that can use these videos and use some help with anxiety maybe. And I'll be back. Thank you for watching.